Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another live stream. And here we are, Graham Potter still in charge of Chelsea, much to the disappointment of many people out there. But yeah, the boys are back in training. There's still plenty going on. We've had a crisis meeting chaired by director Christopher Vivell. Bit more update on Mason Mount's contract, the Aubameyang situation, Kante possibly close to a new deal. So I feel like despite the fact we've not played this week, there's still been plenty going on. So plenty to get stuck into as always, guys. So make sure you smash the likes on the stream, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and don't forget as well, guys, you can donate via the super chat function if you wish to do so. Any donation to the channel, of course, would be massively appreciated as always. But let's get straight into it, people. There was a crisis meeting chaired by Christopher Vivell at Chelsea. I'm not sure if it was today or if it was yesterday, but article came out today. And let's get straight on it. Chelsea discussed form amid Graham Potter pressure before the Tottenham clash. This is Nazar Kinsella in the Standard. Let's just quickly go through it. Graham Potter and Chelsea coaching staff spoke on Tuesday. This happened yesterday. Spoke on Tuesday to address how their season is unravelling. Talks were called at the club's training ground after co-owners Bowley and Egbali gave their support to Potter and told senior staff to stick together after a calamitous few weeks. It's been described as a strategy meeting. Discussions among the football operation at Chelsea centred around how to change course. Potter and his backroom staff arrived at work determined to turn things around. There's been a full debrief following the 1-0 defeat on Saturday. No plans to sack Potter before Sunday's trip to Spurs, but it's accepted there's a lot to do to turn around a run of results that has seen their season fall into a tailspin. Potter and senior staff in the room were united in a bid to resolve the issues at the club, including the low confidence and morale of the squad. Potter has been told to fight through calls for him to be sacked and has a full week to prepare for what feels like a crucial game against Spurs. We had 2 days off, scheduled days off after Southampton. And then Potter retains favour of Chelsea owners for now. Bowley due to be at the Spurs game. And Egbali set to attend Leeds and Dortmund matches. Both were there at a Southampton defeat. Sources insist Bowley and Egbali remain committed to their long-term plans, which have Potter at the heart of them. Potter, who held a no-holds-barred meeting with senior Chelsea players last month, hopes to turn the situation around. So basically, yeah, a long story short, it's been obviously kind of a bit of a crisis meeting in terms of kind of getting the situation back on track, because obviously, yeah, we're under no illusion. Things are not good enough. Things aren't good enough. And it's as simple as that. And, discussions have got to be had. And it's good there's kind of open communication between the board, kind of the senior group of directors, the coaching staff, Graham Potter, etc. Like, that's good to have that open form of dialogue. It really is. And, some people might look at this meeting as like a thing. Obviously, we don't really know what's gone on in there. You don't know the exact words or the exact discussions, but some people might look at that as like, look, Graham, we understand things aren't going well and it's difficult right now, but you've got to get your shit together, sort of thing. It could be something along those lines, or it could just be, just reaffirming that, look, we think you're the guy, you're our guy. We brought you in. We still, look, this whole thing centers around you. Still, we still believe in you. We still back you. Just a bit of a G up, just a bit of a, reassurance of confidence. And then hopefully that can maybe, spark something into life. I'm really not sure. But yeah, it's good that these things are happening. And, Potter's not stupid. He knows full well he's got to turn this around. It doesn't need the fans to be disgruntled to know that 2 wins in 14, 15 games at Chelsea is not good enough. It's like, it doesn't, you don't need to be told that. It's just obvious it's not good enough. And, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because, you feel like a loss to Tottenham on Sunday, and do you think Southampton was bad after we lost that one? With I think that was a turning point for a lot of fans. If we were to lose the Spurs on Sunday, given the fact it's Tottenham rivals, the fact that we've won every single game we've played at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in the league, not considered a single goal. Yes, I'm fully aware that we lost on penalties under Lampard in the Carabao Cup there, but in terms of league performances at Tottenham, haven't let in a single goal there. So this is a real benchmark game. It's a massive game on Sunday. So that, if we were to lose that, which is all ifs and buts at the moment, but you sort of struggle to see where a win's coming from, even though it's Tottenham, it could, even if they want to back him, the fan backlash could become untenable for Potter. And this next run of games is so important for him, and not just for him, but for the club as well. Spurs Sunday, Leeds at home next weekend. Another side struggling against relegation, like Southampton are, and then we go into Dortmund that following midweek. This trio of games coming up is massive. Get a win against Spurs on Sunday, and that could be the sort of the kickstart of the turnaround that Potter needs, that Chelsea needs to try and make the most of this, make the most of the rest of the season. But a loss, and you think, how much worse can it get? I've been going to games a lot this season up and down the country, and every week I'm just like, well, this can't really get much worse. And then we lose 4-1 to Brighton. And then we go up to Newcastle and we're pathetic. And then we go to Fulham and we lose. And then we lose at home to Southampton. So you're thinking, just as you think like all the time it can't get worse, we somehow find a way for it to keep getting worse, which, it's a big problem. I don't really know where we go and how we kind of try and fix this, because it's not like we're getting hammered in these games, because we're not getting hammered in these games. What I'm saying is I'm not making excuses. A loss is a loss, and it's unacceptable to be losing as many matches as we are losing. But at the same time, you're going to the games, or you're watching the games, and it's not like that it's terrible. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like we're getting hammered in games, are being played off the park, and we were lucky to only lose 1-0 sort of thing. It's like, the reason we're not winning these games is because we concede stupid goals, and we just can't put the ball in at the other net. And when you're doing that, it's a problem. Yes, we've shored up a bit. We've shored up a lot defensively, and actually defensively we're very good. And I don't really have any issues defensively. Obviously, on the weekend we looked a little bit, ropey at the back, but with no Thiago Silva there to kind of hold it together. But in general, defensively, we're pretty solid. The midfield still needs work. Yes, Enzo's coming and he's done pretty well, but we're fully aware that we still need one or two big names to arrive in the summer in that area. It's just at the top end of the pitch. It doesn't matter what combination of players it is. It doesn't matter what they seem to do. We just cannot put the ball in the net. And I understand, people that might say, "Oh yeah, well, it's the manager's responsibility to get these guys scoring, give them the confidence, do the right stuff on the training ground." Like, they're obviously working on finishing and stuff in the train at Cobham, but at the same time, like, once you cross that white line, there's not an awful lot the manager can do to influence the game in terms of obviously make substitutions, change things tactically, but that's not going to make players score opportunities. Opportunities comes with confidence, and I think as soon as we get a win, and Sunday's the best place to start, we can start to build that confidence. And when you've got more confidence in the team and things are going well, then you're going to be more confident when you're taking your chances. Whereas at the moment, I think because confidence is so low, we're not playing well. The fans are getting on the manager's back, on the team's back. You're playing with a bit of a fear that, oh God, I can't miss this, because then people are just going to hammer me for it, rather than kind of playing with confidence, which makes life a little bit easier. It does. But yeah, look, in terms of the crisis meeting, I think it's a good thing that's happened. You clear the air, you get your thoughts out on the table, sort of everyone knows what position they're in, and then you try and push on and you try and find some sort of result on Sunday, because Sunday is a must-win. Last weekend was a must-win game. This is even more of a must-win game. We cannot go to Tottenham and not win. From these next two league games, it's a minimum 4 points. It's got to be 6. It has to be 6 from these next two. And then if we can go 6 points and through against Dortmund, or 4 points and through against Dortmund, that definitely buys them a bit more time. But if we were to go out to Dortmund and not win, or not get 4 points minimum from these next two league games, then the writing could really be on the wall, and it could be the end's coming to a near. The end could be nigh for Graham Potter in this situation. But I mean, let me just get to a few things in the chat. Big up everyone, by the way. Darth, big up, bro. Let's have a little look here. I'll get into Matt. I'll come back to this. I'll come back to that later on, Phantom. I will get to that. And yeah, Chelsea can't lose to Spurs on Sunday. That's absolutely clear. Something else that I wanted to get into briefly was just talking about, obviously, Graham Potter and kind of long-term planning at Chelsea versus sort of the short-term thinking. Because a lot of people are, oh yeah, well, hiring and firing's always worked in the past, and we've picked up trophies and we've still been successful. Yeah, to a degree we have. We have been picking up trophies, but in terms of major trophies, like, there's not many we've picked up in the last few years. I mean, last season, yes, we made both domestic cup finals and we won the Club World Cup for the first time in our history, which is great. But at the same time, it's just like a little bit like major trophies, apart from the Champions League, we have been lacking a little bit. And in terms of the league's what everyone wants to win. And, I'm not saying that blindly backing Graham Potter is the answer. But, since we last won the title in 2017 under Kante, we finished 30, 26, 33, and 19 points off the top of the table. Nowhere near challenging for the title. We've been an aging cup side. And this sort of thing, as I've said here, is not good enough. It's not good enough right now, but this has been waiting to happen. This kind of thing has been waiting to happen. We've been on the cusp of something like this happening because all our short-termisms, it seems now, are coming home to plan in terms of a mismatch of players in the squad. Multiple different managers' worth of managers' players. Hard to gel anything, hard to build anything together, hard to build a squad when you're constantly chopping and changing the manager every 18 months or so. And then they got new ideas, new players coming in. You just get left with a mess. And we've had to see, and we've seen how much surgery the squad has required. Lack of overlooking key areas, poor use of money, poor signings in the transfer window. Just seems like a complete lack of identification into transfer targets. Just kind of going for big names, throwing big money at it, thinking, "Oh yeah, this will be all right," without really doing any due diligence in that sense. And look, we want to get back to challenging for the Premier League title. That is absolutely clear. And to do that, in my opinion, and if I'm proven wrong, then I'll happily hold my hands up. You have to think long term. Now, long term doesn't necessarily mean blindly backing Graham Potter, whatever the results. It absolutely doesn't mean that. But it does mean sticking by a manager and giving them a little bit of time to get their ideas across and get kind of out of a difficult situation. And you only have to let's use Arsenal as an example. But yes, they got that FA Cup when they beat us when Lampard was in charge. But in terms of league football, back-to-back 8th place finishes. Arteta was a hated man. They wanted him out of the club, like similar to the situation at Chelsea now. Arsenal back-to-back 8th place finishes, but they held firm. They stuck with Arteta, and now probably ahead of schedule, they're starting to reap the rewards. Yes, they've not won the league, and they may not win the league, and they may not win anything this season. But if you're looking at progress and kind of looking at what sticking by a manager can do, I don't think any Arsenal fan would have said after coming 8th that the following season they'd be top of the league at the end of February by 4 points with a game in hand. Like they wouldn't have believed you. And yes, it's ahead of schedule, but it just goes to show that if you can ride out tough periods and you stick with the manager, you will kind of be rewarded with that. I'm not saying we're going to be top of the league next season or anything like that. I'm just saying that patience and a bit of time does go a long way. And it seems like a large section of the Chelsea fan base are just spoilt brats. We've had a lot of success over the last 20 years. And when you go through an inevitable blip, an inevitable drop in performance levels, then they throw their toys out the pram, start crying about it. Look, I'm pissed off about it, absolutely, and it's not good enough. But let's have a little bit of perspective here. We've been the most successful club in England for the last 20 years, winning more trophies than we could ever imagine. But the reality of the situation is that model under Roman is outdated now. You run out of managers, and it simply just isn't sustainable in the long run. It's just not sustainable. And there's no surprise that we have not come close to winning the Premier League since 2017. And it's because of the way we've run the football club. We've not finished higher than 3rd since then. We've been nowhere near a title race whatsoever. And that absolutely isn't good enough for a club of Chelsea's stature. We have to be challenging for that Premier League title. And in order to do that, you've got to have a manager in place for longer than a year, 18 months. You simply have to. That's the reality of the situation. Gone are those days where you can just bring someone in for a season or bring them in mid-season and they suddenly win the league. That for me, that doesn't happen in football like that anymore in the Premier League or in football in general. Unless the reason why it's worked for us in the past is because we've had a squad capable of winning straight away from the off. This squad is not capable of winning. It's kind of shown it's not capable of winning. Yes, we massively overachieved winning that Champions League. People found the level that is well above their station, and now they've kind of reverted back to their normal level, and we're kind of seeing what we've got. So look, absolutely, you have to think long term. Short termism in football doesn't really get you anywhere, as we're now seeing. All those short term decisions that we've made over the years are now coming home to bite us in the arse in this situation that we're in right now. So for me to challenge for the league, and guys in the chat, please do let me know your thoughts. I honestly don't think you can challenge for a Premier League title by constantly chopping and changing the manager. We've got the investment and the backing from the owners. We've got the ambitions there. We've got the infrastructure in place. We've got the facilities in place. We're starting now to get the quality of players in place. And all we need to do is try and get that to work on the pitch now. That's the missing ingredient. You know, we're getting those ingredients together. We just now need to put them together. We just now need to get it gelling. And, you know, it does take time. And I'm not making excuses for the Southampton performance because it's absolutely dog shit. And despite players need time, the quality of player we have on the pitch, we should have more than enough to beat Southampton at home, 20th, bottom of the league, no manager, no ideas, dog shit. And yet we couldn't do that. So there's got to be something. I'm not saying that, we have to keep Potter or whatever because we've got to think long term. Thinking long term doesn't mean Graham Potter. Thinking long term just means putting the building blocks in place for someone to succeed and be here for longer than 3 years, because no manager's been here longer than 3 years in the last 20 years. And that's got to change. Yes, bro, big up. I watched the highlights of us versus United this morning. Mourinho managing last game of the season. He'd already run. Yeah, mate, those were good times. I think I was at that game. That's when Joe Cole took Rio Ferdinand to the cleaners. That was a good day. Agreed, but it needs to be the right manager. Tuchel wasn't sacked for footballing reasons. That made it for results-based reasons. That made it easier to make the decision. Tuchel was sacked because his visions didn't align with what the direction that the club wanted to go in. And as disappointing and as upsetting as that is, you know, when you got new owners that come in, owners and managers' visions need to align, and you know they need to pull in one direction for the good of the club. You can't have owners in place and a manager in place that doesn't believe in the vision or doesn't agree with the direction the club wants to go in. So unfortunately, he had to go, and of course we miss him, and of course it's a shame that it had to happen. But you know, let's not pretend that this was phenomenal football under Thomas Tuchel. Yeah, he won us the Champions League, unbelievable, and we got to cup finals. Unfortunately, we lost both of them, but you know, we win Club World Cup, Super Cup, etc. You know, a very successful time. But ultimately, he's not a long-term manager either. You only have to look at his career: couple years PSG, 2 to 3 years PSG, 2 to 3 years Dortmund. Like Tuchel's not a guy that builds teams for the future. He's a come in and win now sort of guy. And if we get a squad capable of winning now, then he'd be great. But the fact is, we're trying to move away from that. We're trying to build a situation where we allow a manager to be here for the long term. And that doesn't necessarily mean that guy's Graham Potter, but it means that you've got to get out of this mindset of whoever the manager is, that the first time things get hard and we go through a blip, that they need to be sacked, because that isn't always the answer. And I think deep down, well, I certainly feel this way. I certainly know as well that, you know, sacking the manager is not going to make anything better. All right, Graham Potter goes, and we might get a bit of a bounce for 3 games, and then people pretend that they've forgotten about all the issues and they think they've gone. They haven't. The issues haven't gone. It'll just be once a new manager comes in, and that initial bounce of 3 games, maybe 5 games has gone, and then we revert back to type, and people see the same problems that were there, and they're like, oh, well, nothing's changed. We've just got a different guy in a dugout. This is what I'm talking about. Until we address the fundamental issues at the football club, get the squad balanced, invest in the areas that it needs to be invested in, and that is happening, then we're always going to be in this situation and always going to have these problems, because we're not thinking long term. We're just thinking short term, and eventually all those short term decisions come back and they fuck you over. They absolutely do. I was on edge about Potter sacking. I can understand both sides after Southampton. I'm Potter out. That's fine. Look, I've got no problem with people thinking that Graham Potter's not the right guy or he's not good enough or he should go. That's fine, not a problem. My problem is the people that are constantly going on about it 24/7 every single minute of every single day, commenting Potter out under every single Chelsea related post, like spending their whole day on social media constantly talking down on the manager. Like if you don't think he's good enough or you don't think he's the right guy, that's cool. Back the team, support the team, no problem with it. Don't let's not make a toxic situation worse by doing that sort of thing. Right now the team needs our support and the manager needs our support. Whether you like the manager or not is a different question. It's in everyone's benefits for Graham Potter to turn this round in the immediate short term, because if he turns it around, that means that Chelsea are doing well. So, and we all want Chelsea to do well. And that's the bottom line here. Everyone wants Chelsea to do well and to win. And right now, Graham Potter's the gaffer. So we've got to get behind him and hope that he turns it around and give him the support that he needs. And maybe he does get sacked in a couple of weeks. Maybe he doesn't see the season out. But ultimately, we have to get behind him and support and support the situation that we're in. It's tough right now. I'll go to a lot of games this season up and down the country, and match-going fans are, more or not in support of Potter. The Southampton game was a big turning point at the weekend, but we need to get behind the team, and we need to get behind the manager and give him the support he needs and get the boys through a difficult situation, because all that unrest in the terraces and the stands, it does transmit to the pitch and it makes life a lot more difficult. I'm not telling people not to voice their opinions and saying that fans don't have a right to vent how they're feeling. Absolutely not. But at this point in time, it's really not helpful. We just need to really get behind the team, get behind the manager, and also get behind the team. Whether if you don't want to get behind the manager, that's fine, but just leave it at that. Don't start booing and all that sort of shit. Get rid of Mount, Havertz, Aubameyang, Mendy, Pulisic, and Chelsea. I would agree. I don't think we need to get rid of Mount. If Mount doesn't want to stay, then we're going to sell him. That's the reality of the situation. Havertz, Aubameyang, and Pulisic Aubameyang and Pulisic not good enough to be at Chelsea. Haven't done enough. Mount, if he signs a new contract, fine, no problem. He can be a useful squad player for us. We've seen the quality that he has, and he can certainly be a useful part of the squad going forward, in my opinion. But yeah, Havertz, Aubameyang, Mendy, and Pulisic are. Three of those. I think definitely two of those are going. Maybe Mendy, three. Maybe at least half of those players will definitely go. I think a lot of Chelsea fans aren't asking for instant success. They want to see some type of progress and an identity to how we play, and that's 100% summed up. That's exactly what you want to see. Like I've said it on here, I've said it on Chelsea Fan TV after games. You can't just blindly back something without seeing anything in return to back. And right now we're at a point where it's making it very hard to continue to back this, because you're not getting anything in return that warrants you giving continued backing. So the only way you're going to get that is by picking up results as quickly as possible. And that's exactly what we have to do starting on Sunday. Potter has got to show something. And I was critical of him after the Southampton game, and rightfully so. I've been critical of him quite a lot this season in instances where I think he's just not conducted himself well, or he's not done well enough game management, etc. Things like that. Mount and Havertz. I don't know what you mean by they're toxic. Toxicity. Look, this idea that if Mount leaves, everything's going to be fine at Chelsea is just an utter nonsense. Look, people are entitled to their opinions and whatnot, and I'll say mine. To say like no one knows what happens in the training ground or in the dressing room behind closed doors. All you see are the players on the pitch, and I'm not sure how you can come to a conclusion that Mount or Havertz are toxic with nothing to base it on. The fans love Mount. The match-going fans certainly do. In terms of his performances have been terrible this season. Shouldn't be in the team right now. Needs an extended break from the side. But to suggest that he's toxic, this is a club that he's been at all his life. He's got banners at the ground. He's always, and I go to a lot of games, as I said, he's one of the only players that every single game will go round to all four corners of the ground at home, and obviously away games he comes to the way and applaud the fans, and he'll go, oh, clap the fan merch, and oh, what does that matter? Like, just basic respect and a realization of what it means to play for the football club. And I think we've got to be careful what we wish for in terms of Mason Mount and wanting him to leave. Not only at Chelsea do we want to be in a situation where we have players that know what it means to play for the football club, know the football club inside out, live and breathe the football club. You need those kind of characters in the dressing room. And in Mason Mount, whatever you think of his ability as a football player, and he's shown over the last 2 years by being our player of the season that he's got ability, he's got talent, and he can deliver on the big stage and he can deliver for Chelsea. Yes, it's not been happening right now this season, but he's demonstrated that he can do that. And having people that academy lads, having people that know the club inside out is a real big plus, because they know exactly what it means to play for Chelsea. They get the club, and those are important characters to have around the place. And we need to have more of the right characters, more people that want to play for Chelsea, know what it means to play for Chelsea in and around the squad. But ultimately with Mount, whether if he signs a new contract, great. If he doesn't, then he doesn't, and we have to move on. And we get the money for him, and we're done with it, and we kind of close that chapter. But for people to actively want like one of our own, quote unquote, out of the club, it's just a madness to me. If you don't think he's good enough, or you think he doesn't deserve a new contract and we should sell him, that's cool. Leave it at that. No need for all the additional extras that I'm seeing all the time. It's just unnecessary. It really is. What else have we got here? Yeah, Havertz. Havertz for me is absolutely not good enough. We've seen it over a sustained period of time. Absolutely isn't good enough, Havertz, anymore. I'll never boo Havertz, but I've lost faith in Havertz. I don't have any faith in him to do anything on the pitch. So yeah, for me, Havertz, I've lost faith in him, but I'll never boo him, and I think we should sell him in the summer because he's not been good enough. That's just my opinion. What we got here? Potter cannot leave. No, he won't. He's got the reason why, and I was fuming at this at the time, and obviously subsequently transpired that it was advice from the medical department, which is why Reece James and Silva were left out, because according to them, they were kind of at high risk of getting injured. Now, I'm not sure how you demonstrate that someone is at high risk of injury. I'm not sure how you can kind of work that out. I don't really know, but that the reason they were left out. And it has subsequently transpired that obviously Potter has got the all clear from the medical department to play. Reece James and Silva, probably don't get injured in training this week, will absolutely be playing. Mount being the best player for 2 seasons there allowed. Yeah, people are. This is another thing that I've said before, and I'll say it again now that Chelsea Downs kind of brought it up. You're allowed to have a bad season as a footballer. Like, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen more, and it's going to happen more than once in your career, and that's kind of just the way it is. The reason why I think Mount's coming in for criticism is because of the fact that he's negotiating a new contract, and he wants higher wages in the midst of the worst form of his career, and people don't really engage their brains, and they think, oh, well, he's playing shit now. How can he possibly be asking for more money, rather than looking at the bigger picture? Mount's one of the lowest paid players at Chelsea. I think he's on 80k at Chelsea. Now, I'm not saying he should be paid 300 grand a week. And by the way, that 300k a week figure is a myth. I don't know where that's come from. Mount wants to feel valued by the club, and he wants parity in and amongst the club's top earners. Not the top earner, but in and around that kind of 200k mark. Around that sort of situation. And we might as well talk about Mason Mount now whilst we're on it, and I'll come back to the other bits. David Ornstein obviously reporting at the start of the week on the Athletic Football podcast that basically Mount had rejected multiple contract offers in the summer of 2022, and then again in the autumn before the World Cup. This summer is one decision. What is a decision one way or the other? He either signs this summer or he gets sold. That's the situation. The new board and the new ownership have been very, very clear that they don't want players to enter into the last year of their contract. So you either sign a new deal or you're being sold with 2 years left on your deal. It's as simple as that. So Mount's recently switched agents. He's now going to be represented by his dad, Tony. So maybe that'll be a difference in negotiations. But anyway, the club want to tie him down kind of a 6, 7, 8 year deals like they've been doing. Reece James signed a 6+1, Broja signed a 6+1. The new signings that have come in are signing these long-term deals, as we've seen, and as has been well documented. But Simon Johnson and Liam Toomey in The Athletic reporting that Mount is reluctant to sign a contract that stretches beyond 5 years. Positive talks were held in November, but Chelsea's new structure has seen recent talks fall. Paul Winstanley has met with Mount's representative. So, do you know what? Like, if Reece James signs a 6-year deal with an option for, with an option for a 7th, if Mount wants to sign for 5 years, let him sign for 5 years. Like, what difference does it make if it's 5 years with an option for a 6th or whatever? Why? I don't understand why that's a problem. And do you know what? I can fully understand why players may not want to commit beyond 5 years. Like at 24 years of age, sign a 5-year deal. That takes you up to 29, so virtually 30. The prime years of your career, you want to have the freedom and the options to kind of weigh things up in your career, like and kind of make a decision about what you want to do. We've seen a situation where Harry Kane at Tottenham signed a 6-year contract in his prime, and he couldn't go to Man City because of the length of the contract. And it's as simple as that. So I can understand why you don't want to commit to a deal that ties you down in the prime years of your career. Like I get that. So I've not got an issue with the contract length wanting to be 5 years. Like that's cool, no problem for me. But yeah, ultimately, I think for me on Mount, it would be I'm not saying it would be a regret like a De Bruyne or I'm not saying that if he left, it would be like he'd go on and reach like De Bruyne or Salah levels of leaving. But I think it would be a mistake, and I think we would regret it. Not only would we be potentially strengthening a rival in Liverpool, for example, one of the teams that have been linked with him, we'd also be losing a homegrown player as well, which are difficult and hard to come by in the squad. And obviously, you've got to have a certain amount of those in your 25-man squad as per Premier League rules. But yeah, look, it's absolutely not been good enough from Mason Mount this season, and people are entitled to their opinions, and he shouldn't be in the team right now. And his drop-off from the previous 2 seasons has been alarming. But, this is probably the first terrible season in his career. He's played so much football over the last few years. At some point, it's going to be a dip. At some point, you're going to struggle to find form. At the moment, it looks like he's low on confidence. He's struggling for form. And yeah, and that's just the reality of the situation. But I mean, let's scroll down to these stats here. Over the look, this is obviously so the last 2 seasons when he was Chelsea Player of the Year, I presume, are these ones here. So he's gone from 0.2 expected goals per 90 to 0.31 last season, back down so far this season to 0.11, 0.16 assists, 0.38 assists. Now it's 0.11. Expected assists per 90 is at an all-time low this season, as is SCA. I'm not really sure what SCA is. I'm not sure, but yeah, basically the situation there is that obviously his form has massively dovetailed, and there's no denying it. No one's defending that. No one's saying it hasn't, because it absolutely has. But my thing here is that, like, just get behind him. Like whether you want him here or not, why you would actively boo and actively hate against one of your own players unless they've done something really wrong. It's just an utter nonsense in my mind. I really don't get it. Look, have your own opinions, fine. And we're not always going to agree, and that's cool. I'm happy to disagree with people. I'm happy for people to have a different view to me. Not a problem. But this idea that, we're actively hating on one of our own players, trying to hound them out the football club, it's just an utter nonsense. People just need to grow up. They really do, Get off your phone, put it down, get outside, get some fresh air, go and do something with yourself, It's pathetic doing that sort of constant criticism the whole time of your own players. Criticize where it's due, but don't spend the whole day or whatever you're doing just constantly hammering Mount and other players from pillar to post. It's just like, what is the point? Get behind the team, support the team, and you know, and have your views on individual players like everyone does. Not a problem, but let's not try and actively hound players out of the club where it's absolutely not warranted at all. Nobody is strengthening any team with Mason Mount. Well, okay, bro, that's your opinion. I would disagree. I think it would be a mistake to let Mason Mount join a club like Liverpool, for example. There's a reason why top teams are interested in him, because he's a good player. He's having a terrible season now, but he's a good footballer. We've seen it. He's demonstrated it to us over the past couple of seasons. So, yeah. SCA, the goal rate, 315, making the most goals this season. Okay, I don't really understand. But yeah, that's just that. Those are just my thoughts on Mason Mount. You know, I think he should be signing a new contract. But obviously that's got to be agreed. Image rights, etc. Length of contract, wage, base wage, what he can go up to with certain bonuses. Yeah, you know, it is what it is, guys. It is what it is. Players come and go, and you know that's life. That's football. You know that happens. And if Mason Mount goes, it'll be a shame. Of course it will, but we'll get over it, and Chelsea Football Club will still exist, and we'll move on. If Mason Mount stays, then great. You know, we've got a good player on our hands, someone that can be a very useful member of the squad, and it's good news for us. So you know, either way, whatever happens, just support the kid and stop fucking getting on his back and just battering him. You know, he knows he's not playing enough. His confidence will be low. We need to get behind him and we need to support him. Yes, it's frustrating. You show your frustrations as supporters, but now these are human beings. Imagine if you were struggling in your workplace and you were doing really shit and you were just getting hammered, you were just getting abused. That's not going to help you perform any better, is it? Just think about it that way. But yeah, we move. Moving away from Mason Money Mount to another player. Talking of new contracts, seems to be Chelsea's forgotten man. N'Golo Kante back in team training. He's been back in training this week. I don't know if he's been in full training, but he's been back with the group, having been doing sort of individual work on the grass. And I don't think he's going to be involved against Tottenham, but absolutely maybe Leeds or maybe Dortmund in the second leg. But obviously he's out of contract in the summer. But Fabrizio Romano reporting that Chelsea are progressing in talks with N'Golo Kante over a new contract. Optimism, but they are still waiting to decide on length of the contract. Now, I think this is, for me, a little bit of a no-brainer. Shano, big up, bro. Appreciate you tuning in as always and appreciate the support. What's this here? Bro, we will finance the deal on wage bill. If we sell homegrown... Yeah, it will be. Yeah, no, we're not being... absolutely, Chelsea have to be cutthroat and we have to make ruthless decisions. But in terms of homegrown players being sold, you know, I can think of two straight off the bat that would be ahead of Mason Mount to be sold in Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Conor Gallagher. You know, that they're two far more likely candidates that need to be sold than Mason Mount, in my opinion. People may disagree with me, but I think if you're looking at it and you've got Mount, Gallagher and Loftus-Cheek, who you like, and you had to say, who would you be selling first out of those three? It's Ruben or Gallagher. So you can get your pure profit by selling Loftus-Cheek and Gallagher. If you sold Loftus-Cheek and Gallagher this summer, you're getting £80 million probably. So, you know, yeah, we're going to lose a lot of players this summer. We need to keep on to... Yeah, exactly. You know, this summer is going to be big changes at the club in terms of a lot of players going out the door. For me, I can think of sort of 8 players at least off the top of my head that need to be sold, in my opinion. Pulisic, Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi, Havertz. Oh, bro, come on. I mean, I don't... I like Ruben, but let's not pretend that Ruben's better than Connor and Mason. He just isn't. I'd probably go Mason, Ruben, Connor in that order. But that's my opinion. But yeah, Loftus-Cheek, Gallagher. There's a lot of guys that are going to go. Havertz for me needs to go. Ziyech, Pulisic. Yeah, there's a lot. There are a lot. There's going to be big changes this summer. But anyway, N'Golo Kante obviously hasn't played since the second game of the season back in August, that 2-2 draw against Spurs. He played an hour in that before picking up the injury, and we've not seen him since. And it's March, I think, next week. So yeah, it's mad. it is mad that you've not seen him, but it's great that he's kind of working his way back. And we've got to manage his minutes. We've got to look after him. We've got to not rush him back and risk injury again, because for too many years now, Kante, and rightfully so because he's so important, it's been mismanaged and has been rushed back from injury. And it's cost us big time. So, yeah, look, let's see what we can do with Kante. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see what he's like when he does get back on the pitch and the minutes that he gets. But, we've got to be patient and building up. We've got to build him up over 3-4 games, whether he plays 15, 20 minutes in one, half an hour, then plays maybe a half, then plays 60 minutes. We've got to build him up. He's not going to be ready for 90 minutes. So, yeah, it's exciting to have someone of his quality back, but we've got to be patient with him. And we've got no idea in reality what sort of condition he's going to be in and how good he's actually going to be. Is he going to get back anywhere near the levels that he was at? Can he reach those levels again? But ultimately, for me, I think a new deal is a good thing for Chelsea to do. It's great to bring all these younger players in, but you need a bit of experience around the place as well. And Kante kind of ticks all those boxes in that regard. But he absolutely has to take a pay cut from the wages that he's on. And yeah, he's absolutely cannot be an automatic starter. He would have to be a squad option, a rotation option. And then only then, I think, is that a deal that makes sense for Chelsea and a Chelsea perspective. That's my view on it. Absolutely no problem with Kante staying. I think it's the right thing to do, but it's got to be at most a 2-year deal and with an option for an extra year. But those have got to be, that extra year gets activated based on being able to play a certain amount of games, because you've not demonstrated over the last few years that you can even do 15 games a season. So there's got to be some sort of give here. It's going to be a shorter contract and it's going to be less money. That's the reality of the situation. So, and that's exactly the way that it should be with Kante. But yeah, it absolutely is going to feel like, and I hate that phrase, it's like a new signing, but it is like a new signing because we've not had him for so long. And that's the reality of the situation. We've not had him for so long. So let's kind of see what happens. Let's be patient with him. Let's see what kind of form he returns in. And yeah, as I said, in those circumstances, I think that a new contract is kind of absolutely warranted. If we can agree on those terms, but I think only on those terms in my opinion. But let's kind of wait and see what happens on that one. It was always going to be a case of Jorginho or Kante would be going. Jorginho was going on a free anyway. We sold him in January to get money for him. So from a business perspective, that makes sense. But yeah, let's see what happens with Kante. Let's see if we can get him a new deal. Let's see if we can, let's see if we can get him back to playing anywhere near the levels that we know he can reach, because he can be a really important part of the squad. And, he could, I'd love to see him play alongside Enzo in that pivot if we continue to persist with the pivot. But let's see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, and also in other news today, obviously a lot of fan unrest and, the fame. I'm not sure you guys have seen it on Twitter, on socials, but obviously there's a lot of unrest and people going on about Graham Potter. Oh, we've got to do something to get him out of the club. Well, a couple of absolute brain dead morons organised a Potter out protest for 5 o'clock today, and who would have thought it? Absolutely fucking no one turned up apart from the person himself that organised it. Well done, that man. Well done. Great job. It's pathetic. This is exactly the sort of things that we do not need to be doing. Just people have absolutely no idea. Like organising a protest to get the manager out and thinking that people were actually going to turn up. One person turned up to that protest. So it just goes to show, what people actually think, what that trust, that sort of that kind of idea. Oh, yeah, I'm going to organise a protest on social media and then, meet Wednesday 5 o'clock at Stamford Gate. Yeah, we're gonna protest. We're gonna make them here. No, you're not. One person turned up and you organised it, so that's fell flat on its arse. So I think we Like, we've got to put our energy into the right things here. That is not a constructive use of time. So yeah, we just need to get over that. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting times at Chelsea at the moment. I don't really know what's going to happen here. I really don't. But yeah, just another couple of things that I wanted to cover quickly before I round out here. Let's talk about Mikhailo Mudryk. Obviously, he had a fantastic cameo when he came off the bench against Liverpool, but since then it's kind of not really happened for him. Obviously he wasn't very well against Fulham, and then against West Ham and Dortmund, he struggled to get into the game, struggled to have an impact. I don't think it helps that we don't pass him the ball enough. We didn't get him involved in games enough. But yeah, Shakhtar's director Dario Serna has been speaking today on the Football Ramble podcast, and he's saying, unfortunately, at Chelsea now it's not a good mood, and Mikhailo as well. But Mikhailo has all the qualities to be one of the best players in the Premier League in the next couple of months and years. What else? Oh, that's the podcast there. Yeah. So basically, for me with Mudryk, like, sitting in the away end at Anfield, I was mesmerised when I saw his cameo when he came on. Sort of one of the only players, one of the first players probably since Eden Hazard that made me want to get off, made me on the edge of my seat. Pace, quick feet, direct, eye for goal, eye for a good pass. I mean, that cameo was great. Obviously, subsequently hasn't happened yet, but I think there's a lot to remember with Mudryk. Is that the guy's 22. He's only ever played in the Ukrainian league. His homeland's at war. The Ukrainian league was paused in November. Until Liverpool, he'd played no minutes since November. And he's a young kid and he's learning. The Ukrainian league to the Premier League is such a big step up. These are young kids. We've got to give them a chance. We've got to, allow them the time to bed and allow them the time to get used to the country. And whatnot. It's not just getting used to the football, it's everything. It's getting used to a new life, a new country, a new area, a new way of doing things, a new way of living. There's so much to take on board. And, if all those things aren't in order off the pitch, and it's going to be tough to get things in order on the pitch. So, yeah, it is what it is with Madrid. I think there's an exceptionally talented player there, as has been demonstrated in that Liverpool cameo and in certain points against West Ham, in certain points against Southampton at the weekend. Did a shot right near the end that almost went in the top corner. We just got to be patient with him. And I think that's the problem. Yeah, big up DJ South. Mate, all good with me, thanks. It's just one of those. Hope you're well. Tough times at the moment, but it is what it is. We are where we are. And people have got their opinions, and that's absolutely fine. But yeah, latest, not too much. Well, I mean, obviously we had the crisis meeting chaired by Vivell with Potter, coaching staff, etc., just to talk about the current situation, Mason Mount's contract, etc., just long-term versus short-term planning. And now just a bit about Mudryk and Dario Serna, the Shakhtar director, just saying it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think that's what we all knew. It is going to take time. It's going to take time for all these players. And, look at Joao Felix, and like you see how he's had an impact, but he's kind of struggled to have an impact throughout a whole 90 minutes. An impact for a half or an impact for half an hour. So that's going to be the next challenge for him, is to try and be impactful in a game for the whole 90 minutes rather than just in little patches. And that's the same. That's the same for a lot of the players. Yeah, exactly. This is what I've just been saying. He played his home country's been at war, and he played no football since November before that Liverpool game. So yeah, it's gonna be difficult to get used to things. We know he's a talent. He is a talent, and it's going to take time. But let's be perfectly clear: not all these signings that we've made are going to work out. That's just the reality. It's a numbers game. Not every single signing will work out. And, Mudryk might not work out, but he's got talent, he's got ability, he's got time on his side. And let's kind of see, let's see what he can do. Mudryk needs a coach who knows what he's doing. I mean, that's your opinion, then that's cool. But obviously I don't agree with that. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, Graham Potter might not be the right guy, but he's here now, so that's the reality of the situation. And yeah, this is another good point as well. It's easy to come into a team that's playing well and doing well. It's a lot harder coming into a team that's really struggling and the confidence is low and the fans are on their back. That makes it a lot harder to come into. You're not coming into a good situation. You are coming into a bit of a mess, to put it lightly. Coming into a little bit of a mess. So yeah, all these players need time and they need patience. And I think that's another one. That's another issue is that obviously kind of all these players have come in January when normally that sort of a window would happen in the summer. And the squad, the squad from before the World Cup to after the World Cup is virtually completely different. So you're kind of working with a different group of players that you were working with pre-World Cup. And yeah, and it takes time, and it's hard to bed that many new players into a team, particularly into a losing team. It's easy to bed players in here and there when you're winning and when you're doing well, but to bed these players into a losing team and a team on the floor in terms of confidence and picking up results, then it does make life a lot harder. But there's absolutely no doubt that we should be doing way better than we are, and the levels of performance now are totally unacceptable. They really are, and things have got to improve. Yeah, Badiashile looks like an absolute bargain at the moment for 35 million euros we picked him up for. It seems like an absolute steal, I must say. That is a big steal. I really didn't expect him to be this good this quickly. Didn't really even think he would play that much this season, in all honesty. But I look in terms of Badiashile, in terms of Fofana, in Badiashile and Fofana, we've got a centre-back pairing for the next 5-10 years if they want to stay at the club. That is one of the best centre-back pairings in Europe potentially over the next few years. So that's definitely exciting times there. We just want the attacking players and the midfielders to kind of, have more of an impact and bed in and start doing what we know these players can do. Get Mudryk out my club coming soon from the trolls on. Yeah, mate, that'll be coming soon. It won't take long for that. And then when he scores, they'll be cheering him. So is what it is. Reece, Chelsea, big up. To be fair, Chelsea looked like they were struggling from the very beginning of the season. Yeah, this is it. Like, people that constantly bring up Tuchel, like, seem to have conveniently removed from their memory, or they're choosing to forget that we were shit under Tuchel in the league, and the start of this season, the end of last season, were absolutely dire. We were playing some terrible football. We lost at Southampton under Tuchel. We got hammered at Leeds under Tuchel. The football wasn't good under him in the league, and that's just the reality of the situation. But people seem to conveniently forget those things, and that's the way it is. People seem to forget those things. And we've been on a downward slope for a long time. This isn't just a Potter thing. We were on the downward under Tuchel. We were on it under Lampard, under Sarri. We were heading on a downward spiral, but the odd cup here and there kind of patched over that downward spiral and allowed people to believe that everything was all right and things were better than they were. When in reality, all we were doing was papering over the cracks. We were just putting a plaster on those gaping wounds that required bandages. That's the situation. By the way, guys, keep smashing the likes on the stream and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We'd really appreciate you all subscribing. If you haven't subscribed and you're currently tuning in now, it takes seconds and it does really help me out. So please do that. Would greatly appreciate it. What Potter needs to do is pick. Needs to do and must is pick his 11 general, stick with when, then get a bit of. Yeah, I think look, obviously there is a lot of chopping and changing in the lineup from week to week, and that's not ideal. In some instances, it can't be helped with injuries and whatnot and managing people's minutes. But generally speaking, like, the more settled the lineup is, then the better things are going to be. Making 3 or 4 changes per game is not going to be helpful. It's not going to be conducive to getting good team chemistry and good team cohesion. So I do agree that we kind of need to settle on what we think our best 11 is, and then just roll with that for a number of games. and kind of see what happens. I mean, there's not really any look. A bit of rotation at fullback, maybe between Chile and Correa, fine. Silva and Badia shields that partnership. At the back, Enzo and Cover, let's say, in midfield, and then you want Felix, Madueke, Mudryk behind. Well, it's gonna have to be behind I'd say behind Fofana, and you just kind of roll with that and see how it goes for a few weeks. But yeah, the constant chopping and changing is not going to be. It's not a plus, and yeah, you've got to find an 11 and settle on that and see what happens. Basically, Chelsea was 6th when Potter came in. Now we're 10th. Well, look, the reality of the situation is that we haven't picked up the results. That's why. And no, yeah, the manager's partly is responsible for that, as are the players as well. It's a collective responsibility. It's never one glaring issue. If there was one fault, then it would be easy to address. But the fact is, there are many different things that are contributing to why Chelsea are so shit right now. And if you think Graham Potter is the biggest one of those, then you're very mistaken, because getting rid of the manager is not going to solve the problems at Chelsea. It'll make you forget about it for a few games whilst there's a new manager bounce, but it won't solve the problems. What we got here? God forbid we lose to Spurs and Leeds. Now we all know rivalry with Leeds and Spurs. I ultimately think they don't want to sack him, but a loss to Tottenham on Sunday, you saw against Southampton how a lot of people turned. A loss to the arch rival Spurs and at a ground that we've never lost at in the league, let alone concede a goal at, that might be too much to come back from in terms of the fan noise surrounding the situation. Like, this Spurs game is so important because it could be the beginning of the end for Potter, or it could be the catalyst for an upturn in form and for him to kind of push on and try and do something. And Leeds at home is another tough game. I was up at Ellen Road earlier in the season when we got absolutely spanked 3-0 under Tuchel. And Leeds are another team that have just appointed a new manager. They're struggling down the bottom of the table, relegation. There'll be a low block. Exactly the sort of team that we're going to struggle against. Even at the best of times, we struggle against them just because, we're not very good at breaking low blocks down. So it's going to be tough. But to answer your question, mate, if we were to lose to Spurs and Leeds, I don't see how he can stay. I don't see how he can survive that. I think it's very much going on I don't want to say it's on a game-by-game basis, but it's in a kind of a block of 2 to 3 games, I reckon, kind of assessing the situation and kind of seeing where we're at, because these next 3 games are crucial. Spurs, Leeds, and Dortmund. And that's going to have a big saying on whether Graham Potter sees the season out or he doesn't. Yeah, it's been on that. I said this when we won the Champions League. Winning the Champions League will do more harm than good in the long run. And this is exactly what I meant, because it allowed people to think that squad was better than it was, when in reality, it was nowhere near good enough. And we just massively outperformed ourselves. And from there, we've been on the way down. Mudryk's raw, but his skill is there to be very, very good. How good is up to him? Yeah, I mean, he was a star man at Shakhtar. He was a star man. So yeah, he's got skills. He's raw. He's got ability. Let's see how it gets nurtured, that talent, and let's kind of see what he can deliver. But yeah, no, I'm fully back in Mudryk for sure. Potter doesn't know the meaning of these games. He knows Brighton versus Southampton. No, look, Potter's learning on the job as well. And there's been times where he's not conducted himself like a Chelsea manager should. And that's annoyed people. That's annoyed myself. When you're the manager of Chelsea Football Club, you have to conduct yourself in a certain way and act in a certain way. And at times he's not done that. And he's still learning on the job as well. He's got a lot of things to learn. And it's a unique situation at Chelsea where all the people in senior positions off the pitch and in the dugout are all learning on the job. And that's a tough and the unique situation to be in. It's not an excuse. It's just a difficult situation to be in. I'm going to sound stupid here, but I don't want Zidane, Enrique, Flick. No, I don't want any of those people. This is what I mean. When people talk about, want Potter out, and it's the same names that keep cropping up. Zidane, Enrique, and Flick. One thing, people can't get this into their head. Hansi Flick's not coming to Chelsea. He's Germany manager. There's a home Euros in 18 months. He's absolutely going to want to stay and manage Germany in the home Euros in 2024. After then, who knows? But, Hansi Flick is not going to come to Chelsea. Simple as that, if Potter gets sacked. But that just isn't happening. Zidane was available in September when Tuchel was sacked. He wasn't the answer then. He's not the answer now. Um, Zidane totally unproven outside of Real Madrid. And what I mean by that is the fact, yes, he's won 3 Champions Leagues in a row, the only manager to ever do that, and he's had great success there. It's a 2-team league, and the Champions League is a unique competition. Like, Zidane's shown nothing in his career to suggest that he can build a team or that he can do any of those things. So again, Zidane, despite the fact he's got that pedigree of Real Madrid, was actually relatively unproven as a manager, in my opinion. Who would you bring in if Potter gets sacked? I don't know. That's the problem. When you look at what's available and what Chelsea are trying to do, there's no obvious standout candidate, and I think that's another reason as to why Potter is still in the position that he's in. I'll be at the match against Leeds and Dortmund. Really hope we pick up. The team needs to get back to winning ways, if not for manager, at least for the club. Yeah, 100%. We have to get back to winning ways. Big games against Leeds and Dortmund coming up, the next 2 at Stamford Bridge. I'll be at Leeds game as well. Not sure about Dortmund. I might be at that, might not be, but I'll definitely be at Leeds in a couple of weeks' time. Yeah, we have to win these games. We have to beat Tottenham. We have to beat Leeds, and then we move from there and kind of see what happens. I honestly feel like Potter isn't the guy for us. We need someone with a bit more aggression. Look at Pep, Klopp, Arteta even. They get the best out of the players. Look, different managers have got different personalities. We've been blessed over the years to have managers that are charismatic, outspoken, love it on the touchline and whatnot. Graham Potter's a bit more reserved. He's a bit more inward. He's calmer. He's more of an arm around the shoulder kind of guy. We don't know what he's like in the dressing room, what he's like at the training ground. I'm sure he gets angry and he loses his rag with players and whatnot. But this idea that you can only manage in a certain way is just nonsense. There's so many different ways to be a manager and to express your emotions and all sorts. So I can understand, like, as a fan, why in key moments you perhaps want to see a bit more passion, a bit more life from the bench, but ultimately, what's the most important thing is what he's doing at the training ground, what he's saying in the dressing room, and kind of what he's saying to the players. But it remains to be seen if Potter can be the right guy or not. Let's wait and see what happens. Time will tell, and we will get our answer maybe sooner than we expect. But that's kind of the reality of the situation. I think that Potter does need to massively improve, and there's things that he needs to work on. But I still think he can be that guy for Chelsea. I'm desperate for him to succeed at the club, but ultimately he might not succeed, and he might not be here, for much longer. That's the reality of the situation. Bielsa, no. Hasenhüttl, definitely not. No Martinez. I mean, that Lampard's not better than Potter. Let's get that straight. Neither's Martinez. Neither's Hasenhüttl or Bielsa. Poch is average, in my opinion. He was dog shit at PSG, and he'd done all right at Tottenham, but he didn't win anything. Absolutely wouldn't want Poch. One of the worst PSG managers there's been in the last few years. He was terrible there. The football that PSG are playing under Poch was awful. But some fans wanting Brendan Rodgers. I would have taken Brendan Rodgers a few years ago. Now I'm not so sure. I think he's a very talented manager, very good coach. But I'm not sure if it's the answer for Chelsea, really, if they were looking to go down that route. I don't think it would be. Say Potter's not got the best of players is not true. If you look at his previous job, he needs time. But when you spend that amount Jonas, big up, mate. This is exactly it. Potter's shown at Brighton that given time, he can develop players very well. In terms of Caicedo, McAllister, to name a few, Cucurella, etc. So given the time, Potter can succeed, and he's shown he can succeed. It's just we need to pick up the points quickly, and maybe he might not be afforded that time. That's the situation. The time's restricted, and when you spend money, the pressure ramps up as well. But Potter certainly knows how to get the best out of players because he's got the best out of players at Brighton. Yes, it's a level up at Chelsea, and it might require a bit more, but I do believe he can get there. But ultimately, right now, it's hard to back the situation, and he absolutely isn't doing a good enough job. That is abundantly clear. It really is. No, Brendan Rodgers. No, I agree. Probably not. Potter is dog shit. Lampard did get top 4 with a transfer ban, but let's not try and pretend that Lampard's some sort of amazing manager, because he's not. He's proven that he's not that great. At the moment, he's still young and he's still learning, and the Chelsea job was way too soon for him. But yeah, that's kind of the reality of the situation. But yeah, unless there's any more last questions in the chat, then I am probably gonna round this one out, guys. Yeah, thank you for tuning in as always. Really appreciate it, guys. Make sure you smash the likes on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Please do hit that red subscribe button. It does really help me out. I enjoyed this one tonight, guys. Thanks for getting involved in the chat. I'll be back on Friday with a preview for the Tottenham game, so make sure you tune in then. But until then, guys, enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Catch you again soon. Up the Chelsea.